This is where the fun begins.
Hi guys, welcome to the channel, and in this video I'll be ranking all 22 heroes and villains in Star Wars Battlefront 2. For each hero I will talk about their abilities and how good they are in Heroes vs Villains and Galactic Assault. Remember that this ranking is my opinion, so if you disagree that's fine. Feel free to leave your opinion in the comments below, and with that said, let's get into the video. In last place is BB9E. BB9E fills that more support role, so he is more useful in Galactic Assault than Heroes vs Villains. I'll admit, his smoke screen ability is useful if you need to get away from enemies and end battle, or it can be used to sneak up on your enemies. His shock screen is pretty useless because it pushes them away, unless you want to force enemies off the map. It does overheat blasters when you activate it. His charge-up ability prevents blasters from overheating for a short period, and during the ability, teammates' abilities recharge faster. And number 21 is Finn. He's another supportive character. He has two team-up abilities, Big Deal, that grants allies with temporary health, damage reduction, temporary blaster cooldown, and faster ability recharge. The second, called Undercover Team, grants allies increased sprint speed, they become undetectable on enemy scanners, and it reveals enemies' locations. His Jedi is one of the best abilities in the game. Finn locks onto enemies and hits every time. Overall, I think Finn has more use in Galactic Assault than Heroes vs Villains, because in Heroes vs Villains I find it very hard to get kills. Next at 20 is Chewbacca or Chewie. Personally, I hardly play him in Galactic Assault or Heroes vs Villains. His bowcaster is powerful, and it can damage enemies through blocks, but the damage drops off really quickly. His shock grenade speaks for itself, his charge slam can knock over enemies, and his Ferris bowcaster is very good and deals high damage. Chewie is strongest when his abilities are all recharged, but when they aren't, he is vulnerable and can be easily killed. Overall, I think Chewie's abilities work the same in both modes. I just don't choose to play him, I just don't find him that fun. At 19 we have BB-8. He is more offensive than BB-9E because of his abilities. His abilities are more useful in Galactic Assault but are still effective in Heroes vs Villains. His left ability, called Resistance Backing, allows himself and his allies to become undetected on enemy scanners whilst revealing enemies' locations. Revealed enemies take increased damage whilst the ability is active. His right ability, called Rolling Charge, makes BB-8 charge at an enemy and knock them over. It does kill all troopers and can damage saber characters through blocks. His middle ability, called Cable Spin, is one of the best abilities in the game. When positioned right, it can clear out entire rooms. BB-8 also gets damage reduction whilst the ability is active. I use BB-8 more in Galactic Assault because of his passive abilities, but he's still fun to play in Heroes vs Villains. Next is Captain Phasma. Her blaster is one of the weakest in the game. Some of her abilities can be effective, like her staff strikes. They are great to use when enemies come too close, and her droid can be very effective in Galactic Assault at holding objectives because it shocks enemies when they come in range of it. She is very reliant on her droid, and it helps to stay near it. But that way she is vulnerable, and that is often why I don't use her a lot. Her survivor ability gives her temporary health. With the right star cards, this can make her very tanky. She can also be good in certain situations, but there are many heroes who are better than her. In the 17th spot is Lando Calrissian. Again, his blaster is very weak. It is called a sniper, but it isn't because the damage drops off very fast. His blaster does have night vision, which can be paired with a smoke grenade so he can see through it by the slant. His disabler is very good if you disable it, so it shocks enemies. If you aim for the head, you can melt a villain from max health to very little health in a matter of seconds. His Sharp Shot is one of the best abilities in the game. It locks onto multiple targets, damaging all of them. It does kill most creepers with one hit. Lando is good, but against most villains and against many troopers he does die very easily. Next at 16 is Boba Fett. He has the most movement in the game with his jetpack. His abilities when paired are quite good. His concussion rocket blinds enemies and overheats their blaster. His rocket barrage fires small rockets from his wrist, and for the hunt scans the area for enemies and also gives you unlimited jetpack fuel whilst the ability is active. However, I would not recommend using Boba on small maps or maps that are inside because you can't use his jetpack properly. But when used properly, he can be hard to hit because he's very fast whilst using his jetpack. First of the Saber characters is Yoda. He is good but he can be easily killed in my opinion, and he is the lowest swing speed and it is hard to parry with him because of this. His Unleash ability is his best ability. When it absorbs blaster fire, the radius is increased. His Presence ability gives him and his allies temporary health, and his dash strike allows him to dash forward and damage enemies even through their blocks. Yoda is better in Galactic Assault than Heroes vs Villains because his abilities work well together, especially for getting a kill streak, and he is hard to hit because of his small size. In the next spot is Boss. He is one of the best to get a kill streak with because of his abilities. They deal a lot of damage and are great for holding objectives. He is effective at long and close range with a sniper. He can one-hit most troopers with a fully charged shot. All of his abilities are good at close range. His Deoxys grenade is a gas grenade that detonates when touching a surface and damages enemies within. His proximity mines are very good, detonating when someone triggers them and they deal very high damage. Predator Instincts gives Boss thermal vision and changes his primary weapon to a micro grenade launcher. With all of these abilities, Boss is very powerful. Coming in at 13 is Iden Versio. Iden can be effective in some situations. She can be effective when she has support from her teammates, and when she does, she can spam her ult fire at enemies. She does kill most troopers when it hits for maximum damage. I think that her abilities are average. The stun ability is her best one, stunning enemies, which then you can melt them if you aim for the head. The droid sword protects her from damage from blasters for a short period. Her pulse cannon is effective at long range, you can charge it up for maximum damage. Also, it does do a small amount of splash damage through blocks. With all of this, she is good in Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains. In 12th position is Emperor Palpatine. I know a lot of you would disagree, but I think he's not that good in Heroes vs Villains. He's definitely better in Galactic Assault. His abilities are average and he is one of the best dodges in the game. His chain lining is very good and is great for getting multi-kills. Electrocute stuns enemies which leaves them open for attacks, and Dark Aura is useless in my opinion. It does very little damage and isn't active for very long, so he is definitely more effective against blaster characters and saber wielders. Moving into the top half of the ranking, we have General Grievous. He is a good choice in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains because of his abilities. His thrust surge makes him lunge forward and knock down enemies. It does kill most troopers. His Claw Rush ability is probably the most overpowered ability in the game right now. You can knock down enemies multiple times with this ability. Unrelenting Advance has few uses. It's useful if enemies are spamming their lightsaber attack at you. You'll damage them, but they will not damage you. He has the lowest stamina, so it's better for killing blaster characters. As we move into the top 10, we have Han Solo. His damage output is very high, his blaster deals high damage, as well as his abilities. They are all very good. His Detonate Charge is one of the best abilities in the game. I'd recommend detonating it as soon as possible. It's so powerful it can knock over saber characters. Hand Shoulder Charge is good. It kills all troopers and can knock over saber characters and damages them through their blocks. sharpshooter allows him to shoot his blast rapidly while the ability is active, and can be strong in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains. Next is Princess Leia. I think she is the best blaster character in the game. Her pistol puts out high damage and has an ult fire which is effective at long range. Her thermal detonators are very good. They kill all troopers and deal high damage. Her squad shield supports her and her teammates by regenerating the health of her and her allies. Rapid fire is just a laser and can take an enemy from max health to no health in a matter of seconds. With all of this, she is a great choice in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains. In the number 8 spot is Rey. I think she is a balanced hero, having a good attack and defense. Her abilities are average, but Dash Strike knocks over enemies and kills most troopers. The Mind Trick is the most annoying ability in the game if you're against it, because it inverts your controls and reduces your sensitivity. Insight gives Rey the upper hand in combat because she knows her enemy locations, and this is a good combination to pair with Dash Strike. And this also decreases her stamina drain and increases her lightsaber damage. With these abilities, she is good in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains. And number 7 is Count Dooku. I think Dooku is the best for dueling and is better in Heroes vs Villains than Galactic Assault because his abilities are more effective against individuals. His lightning stun knocks enemies to the floor and kills most troopers, but is less effective against multiple enemies. His exposed weakness is not great and can only be used on one enemy. It makes them run slower and they receive increased damage. His Duelist is one of the best abilities in the game. They make Dooku deal more damage and gives him increased swing speed. All of his abilities have long animations, but they are all great for 1v1s. Taking spot number 6 is Obi-Wan Kenobi. He has the most stamina in the game. Obi-Wan is definitely a strong choice in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains. His abilities are very good. All-out push allows Kenobi to line up a push that reaches far, but you can release it quicker. Defensive rush makes him run forward, blocking all incoming fire and hitting enemies as he runs through. At the end, you can deliver a final swing. He also cannot be hit from lightsaber swings whilst using this ability. Restrictive Mind Trick prevents enemies from using their abilities. He is also good for dueling. I think he's the best for parrying, and Obi-Wan is definitely underrated. As we enter the top 5, we have Darth Maul. He's the most versatile saber character, which makes him very hard to hit. His abilities are all good. His Furious Throw allows him to throw his lightsaber in a straight line and damages all enemies it hits. Spin Attack makes Maul jump forward quickly, swinging his lightsaber in the process and hitting enemies. Chokehold chokes enemies for a second and then throws them away from him. I think Maul is one of the best in Galactic Assault and average in Heroes vs Villains. Just missing out of the top 3 is Luke Skywalker. He has the fastest swing speed in the game. His push knocks back enemies and kills most troopers. Repulse knocks over enemies all around when they are in its radius. Rush makes Luke dash forward, swinging his lightsaber in the process. Overall, I think that Luke is one of the best choices in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains. In Galactic Assault, he can rack up a very nice kill streak. In third position is Kylo Ren. He's one of the best characters in the game. His abilities are all very good, and when they are combined, they are amazing. His paw pulls enemies towards him, leaving them easy to kill. Freeze immobilizes enemies in front of him for a few seconds, leaving them open for attacks. His frenzy locks onto enemies, jumping between them. Against saber characters, the final swing will go through their blocks. The ability combination works well in both Galactic Assault and Heroes vs Villains, and can get you very nice kills through them both. The runner-up is the chosen one, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin has the best ability combination in the game. Paw Dominance allows Anakin to pull enemies close to him, leaving them open for attacks. Passionate Strike lets him swing his lightsaber, damaging enemies through their block. Heroic Might is very good. It knocks over all enemies around him. The radius gets bigger when he is holding down the ability and receiving damage. He is the only hero or villain with a fourth ability, which has to be charged up to use. When it is available, he grabs enemies off the ground and chokes them before throwing them away. This charges up when himself or allies take damage. I think Anakin is the best character to get a kill streak with in Galactic Assault and one of the best in Heroes vs Villains. Taking top spot is Darth Vader. He is just a tank, and he gets a lot of damage reduction. With the right star cards, he can almost have 1000 health. His abilities are very good, especially when they are combined. Saber Throw damages all enemies it hits. Force Choke is one of the best abilities in the game. He lifts enemies off the ground, choking them, and he can drag them into dangerous areas. This ability paired with Saber Throw can do a ton of damage. Focused Rage gives Vader temporary health, decreased stamina drain, and increased lightsaber damage. I think Vader is one of the best in Galactic Assault and the best hero in Heroes vs Villains and in the overall game. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. Remember to leave your opinion in the comments below, and thanks for watching.